The cruelest betrayal never arrives with a loud confession. It takes root silently amid a glamorous crowd. When the man I spent 10 years building an empire with blatantly claimed my hard work and traded lustful glances with another woman on stage, a cold resolution froze my mind. I did not shed a single tear. The dark Chicago night would become the perfect veil for the permanent evaporation of an obedient wife and the rise of a silent punisher. Hello to the wonderful listeners of Violet Revenge Stories. Our channel has recently been demonetized by YouTube, leaving us without the budget to keep operating. If you find today's story engaging, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking team to cover their living expenses and continue creating stories for you. You can donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on the screen or clicking the PayPal link in the description or comments of this video. My name is Cassidy Edwards. The Crystal Ballroom of the Drake Hotel in Chicago was suffocatingly warm, filled with the clinking of crystal champagne flutes and the endless chatter of the city elite. I stood completely still in the darkest corner of the extravagant venue, letting my black evening gown blend seamlessly into the shadows. Across the sea of tailored tuxedos and glittering designer dresses, my husband, Marcus, stood holding court. The golden champagne in his hand caught the light of 1,000 cascading chandeliers. He briefly turned his head and glanced in my direction. It was a fleeting, entirely hollow look. There was no warmth in his eyes, no recognition of the immense journey we had survived together, and absolutely no shared triumph. It was just a chilling, empty indifference before he deliberately turned his back to me. In the next smooth motion, his arm slid securely around Vanessa's waist, pulling her impossibly close. They were celebrating the absolute pinnacle of our corporate success. Yet I was left entirely invisible, a ghost haunting my own celebration. The applause from the crowd was deafening as Marcus stepped up to the grand podium. His voice, smooth, deep, and endlessly charismatic, echoed powerfully through the massive hall. He spoke eloquently of endless late nights, of his own visionary leadership, and of the relentless, unforgiving drive it took to build Aura Nova Solutions from a struggling garage startup into a reigning tech behemoth. I listened carefully to every single word. I waited patiently for my name to cross his lips. For 10 long, grueling years, I had been the absolute core software architect. I wrote every single line of the foundational code that made the company function, sacrificing my sleep, my physical health, and my peace of mind. I had missed family gatherings, skipped meals, and poured my soul into the algorithms. Yet, as Marcus loudly thanked the wealthy investors, the marketing team, and even his personal assistant, my entire existence was completely and utterly erased. He proudly claimed my life's work as his sole, magnificent creation. As he finally concluded his arrogant speech, he raised his glass high and pointed it directly toward Vanessa. She was standing at the very edge of the stage, glowing radiantly in a sleek, crimson-red dress that violently demanded attention. Their eyes locked under the glaring, bright spotlights for a long, heavy moment. It was not a look of professional gratitude. It was not a display of friendly camaraderie between coworkers. It was raw, unfiltered, burning lust. It was a blatant, unapologetic usurpation happening right in front of my face. They were silently declaring their sweet victory over me to a room full of powerful people who either did not know the truth or simply did not care. Vanessa smiled at him, a victorious, knowing smirk that clearly told me she firmly believed she had won everything I had ever built. She genuinely thought she was successfully taking my company and my husband all at once. Any other devoted wife might have caused a massive scene right then and there. Any other betrayed woman might have screamed at the top of her lungs, shattered her glass against the wall, or collapsed onto the floor in a puddle of tears. I did not shed a single, solitary tear. My eyes remained perfectly dry. My posture remained stiff, and my breathing remained incredibly even. The initial, agonizing shock had completely burned out of my nervous system exactly 4 months ago. That was the exact moment when I first hacked into Marcus's private, encrypted servers and uncovered the filthy, undeniable truth. I had spent 120 exhausting days meticulously tracking their secret hotel bookings, reading their disgusting private messages, and watching them slowly dismantle my life behind my back. They genuinely thought they were incredibly clever. They completely forgot they were dealing with the brilliant person who personally designed the very security system they used to hide their pathetic sins. I pushed myself off the cold wall and walked slowly, with quiet purpose, toward the center of the bustling room. The classical music swelled loudly, effectively masking the sharp, rhythmic sound of my black heels against the polished marble floor. I confidently approached the reserved VIP table near the front stage, completely unnoticed by the celebrating, oblivious couple. I reached over with my right hand and slipped the heavy, 5-carat diamond wedding ring off my left ring finger. The expensive stone felt exactly like a block of ice against my skin. I placed it gently, making absolutely no sound, onto the cold glass surface of the table. Right next to it, I placed my thick, black titanium master security card. That specific card gave me supreme, unrestricted access to every locked door and encrypted server at Orinova Solutions. Leaving it there was my silent, final resignation from a life built on a foundation of rotting lies. Without throwing a single, regretful backward glance toward the podium, I turned around and walked straight out of the crowded ballroom. I pushed my weight through the heavy gilded doors and stepped out into the freezing, unforgiving Chicago night. The bitter, icy wind whipped violently against my face, cutting straight through the thin, delicate fabric of my dress. But the intense cold felt incredibly, wonderfully liberating. I hailed a passing yellow cab and opened the back door. "Take me to the airport, please," I said quietly, my voice steady and cold. I closed the door, officially leaving behind the toxic life I had known. I had spent 10 years patiently building a powerful kingdom for a man who carelessly threw me away like garbage. Now, I was officially activating a flawless, pre-programmed escape plan that would systematically tear his entire stolen world down to the ground. The yellow cab blurred past the towering skyscrapers, speeding down the empty interstate highway toward the airport. I handed the driver a crisp $100 bill, told him to keep the change, and stepped out into the chaotic drop-off zone of Chicago O'Hare. The plan required absolute precision, and the first step was creating a flawless illusion. I walked straight to a bustling ticketing counter and purchased a one-way, first-class ticket to Seattle under the fabricated identity of Elena Vance. I paid exactly $1,200 in physical cash. I intentionally lingered near the bright security cameras, ensuring my face was recorded at multiple distinct angles. I passed through the transportation security checkpoint, leaving a massive, glaring digital footprint pointing directly toward the Pacific Northwest. The authorities, and Marcus, would undoubtedly waste at least 48 hours chasing a ghost across the country, but I had absolutely no intention of boarding that flight to Seattle. The moment I entered the sprawling international terminal, I slipped inside a crowded family restroom. I walked into the last stall and retrieved a small, unassuming gray duffel bag I had taped beneath the sink unit exactly 2 days prior. I stripped off the elegant, restrictive fabric of my evening gown, tossing it carelessly into the waste bin. I quickly changed into faded blue jeans, a plain black cotton shirt, and an oversized beige trench coat. I pulled a dark woolen beanie tightly over my hair to conceal my recognizable features. I took my primary smartphone, the expensive smartwatch strapped to my wrist, and a tiny tracker Marcus had covertly installed on my keychain months ago. I placed them all on the hard tile floor and crushed them violently under the heavy heel of my boot until the glass shattered and the microchips snapped in half. I swept the broken pieces into the trash in less than 10 minutes. My old identity ceased transmitting any signals. I walked out of the restroom completely invisible, blending effortlessly into the exhausted sea of midnight travelers. I exited the airport through the lower baggage claim doors and boarded a public transit bus heading in the exact opposite direction. I disembarked near an obscure, poorly lit suburban motel. Sitting on a rusted metal bench beneath a flickering street lamp, I pulled a brand new, unregistered laptop from my duffel bag. I connected to a heavily encrypted, decentralized network. It was time to pull the plug on the empire I had built. My fingers danced rapidly across the keyboard, typing the complex sequence of codes required to bypass Orinova's perimeter firewalls. Because I was the sole architect who designed the entire infrastructure, the system welcomed me like an old friend. I bypassed 3 separate layers of biometric authentication using a master backdoor I had quietly coded 5 years ago. Once inside the core database, I initiated the catastrophic lockdown sequence. I severed the vital connections between the primary servers and the cloud backup drives. I then deployed a military-grade encryption algorithm across every single line of the foundational software. I scrambled the source code into meaningless gibberish, locking it securely behind a 256-bit security key that I instantly deleted from existence. The heart of Aura Nova Solutions stopped beating. The screens in their multi-million-dollar server room would go permanently black. Next, I opened a hidden browser window to access our joint financial portfolios. Legally, I was entitled to exactly 50% of every asset we had accumulated over the past decade. I did not take a single penny more, nor a single penny less. I executed an intricate, pre-programmed web of automated wire transfers. Exactly $45,700,000 drained rapidly out of our domestic accounts. The massive sum bounced erratically through dummy shell corporations in 15 different countries, effectively vanishing into a dense labyrinth of offshore banking. The money finally settled securely into an anonymous trust fund that no federal agency or private investigator could ever subpoena or trace. By the time the sun rose the following morning, Marcus would awaken to an apocalyptic nightmare. I could perfectly picture the moment he found the diamond ring and the security badge abandoned on the table. His initial irritation would quickly morph into blind, frantic panic when his phone started exploding with desperate calls from his terrified engineering directors. He would rush to the corporate headquarters only to discover that the servers were catastrophically offline. His entire code base was utterly useless, and his company was hemorrhaging millions of dollars by the minute. He would scramble to access the bank accounts to hire crisis management teams, only to find half of his liquid wealth completely vaporized into thin air. While Marcus was trapped in the burning wreckage of his own making, I was safely touching down in a completely different world. The commercial flight I had quietly boarded under a secondary, watertight alias landed smoothly on the hot asphalt of Texas. I walked out of the Austin airport, letting the dry, blazing heat wash over my face. I hailed a local taxi and opened the heavy yellow door. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked, looking at me curiously through the rearview mirror. "Take me to the downtown business district, please," I replied smoothly, my voice completely devoid of any past trauma. I settled into the back seat and pulled out my new, legally authentic driver's license. I stared at the name printed in bold black ink. The old version of me was dead and buried in the freezing snow of Chicago. I smiled softly to myself as the city's skyline came into view. Harper Quinn was finally ready to begin her new life. The Austin sun was glaring against the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new penthouse office. Within precisely 3 weeks of arriving in Texas, the entity known as Harper Quinn had ceased to be merely a name on a forged passport. I systematically established a boutique cybersecurity consulting firm, deliberately operating under the radar, but armed with an impossibly perfect corporate portfolio. Every credential, every past client reference, and every academic achievement attached to my new persona had been meticulously crafted and deeply embedded into international databases. I deliberately chose high net worth, discreet clients for my fabricated resume to ensure nobody would ever question my authority or my exorbitant consulting fees. I leased a high-end server facility and surrounded myself with glowing monitors, turning my silent office into a digital fortress. From this absolute sanctuary, I watched the world I left behind slowly begin to fracture and bleed. The first major fracture appeared on a Tuesday morning. The global financial news networks simultaneously broadcasted a massive breaking story. Auranova Solutions was officially entering the final stages of a monumental acquisition. A multinational tech conglomerate, Apex Global Corporation, was preparing to purchase the company for a staggering $2,500,000,000. I sat perfectly still in my leather chair, watching the scrolling text on the news ticker with cold detachment. The timing was entirely too perfect. Marcus was trying to liquidate the empire and cash out before the rotting foundation completely collapsed under his feet. My fingers drifted over the mechanical keyboard as I initiated a series of untraceable proxy connections. I needed to see exactly how deep his deceit truly ran. Through a private, decentralized intelligence network I had quietly cultivated over the years, I began slicing through the personal offshore accounts of Marcus and Vanessa. It took me exactly 14 hours of relentless decryption, but I finally unearthed the ultimate smoking gun. Hidden beneath layers of fake corporate registries in the Cayman Islands was a recently established shell company. I uncovered the digital signatures of both Marcus and Vanessa on the confidential incorporation papers. Vanessa was not just a romantic mistress. She was a fully complicit financial conspirator. The documents revealed a beautifully sinister plan. They had legally structured the Shell Corporation to absorb exactly 95% of the upcoming acquisition funds. Furthermore, the internal emails I intercepted outlined a deliberate strategy to forcibly remove me from the board of directors, citing gross negligence. Just days before the deal was supposed to close, they never just wanted to be together. They wanted to strip me of my legacy, steal my life's work, and walk away with billions of dollars while leaving me entirely destitute. The profound coldness of their calculation did not enrage me. It simply validated my absolute lack of mercy. While I analyzed their financial crimes, Marcus decided to play his next desperate card in the public eye. I turned up the volume on the television monitor just in time to see him giving an exclusive, tearful interview to a major business network. He looked appropriately disheveled, wearing a carefully chosen dark suit without a tie to convey exhaustion and deep sorrow. My wife has been suffering from severe mental health crises for the past several months. Marcus lied smoothly directly into the camera, his voice trembling with practiced emotion. Her sudden disappearance has devastated our family. We are pleading for privacy during this incredibly difficult time as we pray for her safe return. I scoffed quietly at the screen. It was a brilliantly manipulative public relations strategy. By publicly labeling me as mentally unstable and missing, he was simultaneously establishing a perfect scapegoat and violently deflecting attention away from the apocalyptic technical disaster happening behind closed doors at Auranova. He needed the powerful investors to believe the recent operational delays were merely temporary hiccups caused by a tragic family emergency, rather than the reality that their entire core software architecture was currently locked behind an unbreakable encryption wall. However, his pathetic lies were not enough to blind the ruthless corporate sharks at Apex Global Corporation. The acquiring conglomerate was composed of veteran investors who did not hand over billions of dollars based on sympathy or tearful television interviews. My monitor flashed with an intercepted internal memo from the Apex legal team to Marcus. They were officially noting significant, inexplicable drops in Auranova's server performance and data retrieval speeds. The memo explicitly demanded a comprehensive, independent audit of the entire source code and a deep forensic review of the corporate financials before they would sign the final binding agreement. They gave him exactly 7 days to comply. They stated clearly that any failure to produce transparent, fully functioning code architecture would result in an immediate cancellation of the multi-billion-dollar offer. Marcus was now trapped in a rapidly shrinking box. He could not provide the source code because I had permanently scrambled it. He could not show them the real financial data because it would reveal the massive deficits and illegal fund diversions he and Vanessa had been executing for the past year. And then, the quiet sabotage I had left behind began to awaken. Before I walked out of that ballroom in Chicago, I had not only locked the system, but I had intentionally planted a series of highly aggressive, dormant logic bombs deep within the financial reporting software. These subtle loopholes were programmed to activate the moment anyone attempted a massive data migration or external audit. as the desperate engineers at Oranova frantically tried to piece together fake financial ledgers to satisfy the Apex auditors. My hidden code began silently eating away at their fabricated numbers. It was a digital rot designed specifically to target dishonesty. Every time they saved a fake revenue report, the algorithm covertly altered the decimal points, randomly deleted vast columns of expense data, and cross-contaminated the tax filings. I watched the live data streams from my office in Austin, monitoring the exact moments when their internal systems rejected their lies. The harder Marcus tried to artificially inflate the company's valuation to secure his fraudulent payout, the faster my code destroyed the very evidence he needed to survive. He was blindly attempting to build a house of cards in the middle of a hurricane, completely unaware that the wind was being controlled by the woman he thought he had successfully buried. The meticulous, analytical web I was spinning was entirely flawless, and the prey was about to run completely out of options. The countdown to the Apex Global acquisition deadline became a suffocating noose around the neck of my former husband. With exactly 168 hours remaining until the corporate execution, his carefully constructed facade of arrogant control completely shattered. The internal surveillance cameras I still secretly monitored showed a man on the verge of total psychological collapse. Marcus paced furiously across his luxurious corner office, throwing crystal paperweights at the wall and screaming at his elite engineering team. They were entirely useless against the military-grade encryption I had woven into their foundation. Desperation is a powerful catalyst. It blinds even the most cautious men. Realizing his in-house talent was utterly incapable of breaking my code, Marcus cast a desperate, frantic net across the darkest corners of the global tech underworld. He was blindly searching for a miracle worker, a world-class decryption expert who could miraculously salvage his billion-dollar dream before the deadline expired. He did not know it, but I had already paved the exact road I wanted him to walk down. Through a complex network of anonymous intermediary channels and fabricated dark web whispers, I had carefully positioned the name Harper Quinn as the absolute pinnacle of digital crisis management. It took him exactly 48 hours to fall into the trap. The encrypted communication pinged on my secure server late on a Thursday evening. It was a highly confidential request from the desperate chief executive officer of Oranova Solutions, begging for an immediate, absolute rescue. I let him sweat for exactly 12 hours before I responded. When we finally connected over a heavily encrypted, voice-altered audio line, his tone was breathless and frantic. "Are you the expert they call Harper?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling with a pathetic mixture of authority and sheer terror. "I am," I replied, my voice digitally modulated into a cold, unrecognizable robotic hum. "I have reviewed the preliminary diagnostics of your network failure. Your core architecture is locked behind a 256-bit adaptive encryption. Your internal team is making it worse every time they try to force entry." "Can you break it?" he demanded, practically choking on his own desperation. "I need full operational capacity restored in less than 5 days. I am facing a multi-billion-dollar acquisition that is currently collapsing." I let a heavy, suffocating silence hang in the digital space before I delivered my terms. "I require a retainer of $5 million transferred immediately into an offshore escrow account before I type a single line of code," I stated with absolute, unwavering authority. "Furthermore, I require supreme, unrestricted administrative access to your entire internal server network, every firewall, every hidden directory, every single employee communication log. I see everything, or I do nothing." He hesitated for less than 10 seconds. The threat of losing billions made the $5 million fee seem like mere loose change. "Done. You will have supreme access within the hour." The profound irony was intoxicating. He was eagerly handing the master keys of the kingdom right back to the very architect who had just burned it to the ground. The moment my fabricated credentials cleared their security gates, I was legally inside the Oranova mainframe once again, but I was not there to fix anything. I was there to orchestrate a masterpiece of psychological warfare. I needed a convincing scapegoat to deflect any potential suspicion away from my miraculous disappearance. Using my unfettered access, I carefully planted a trail of highly sophisticated, fake electronic clues deep within the server logs. I manipulated the digital footprints to make it appear as though the catastrophic breach originated from foreign servers belonging to a massive rival technology firm. I fed these fabricated breadcrumbs directly to Marcus. I watched through his office webcam as he read my diagnostic report. His eyes widened with absolute fury. He slammed his fists onto his mahogany desk, firmly believing that his fierce billionaire competitors were deliberately orchestrating a corporate assassination to destroy his company before the acquisition. He took the bait entirely, focusing all his blinding rage outward, completely unaware that the real enemy was sitting comfortably in Texas, pulling his strings. However, while Marcus was easily blinded by his own corporate ego, Vanessa possessed a different kind of venomous intelligence. She was naturally paranoid, and the sudden, highly convenient appearance of an anonymous, godlike security expert immediately triggered her survival instincts. She did not trust Harper Quinn. Through the internal communication logs, I was now legally monitoring. I watched her operate behind his back. She quietly wired $50,000 from a secret personal account to a private investigative firm in New York. Her instructions were clear. Dig up everything on the identity, the physical location, and the past clients of Harper Quinn. She was actively hunting my shadow. I could not allow her to interfere with the final stages of the execution. It was time to turn the conspirators against each other. I decided to strike her exactly where she was most vulnerable: her greed and her absolute lack of trust in the man she was sleeping with. I utilized an untraceable burner protocol to send a highly encrypted, anonymous text message directly to Vanessa's personal smartphone. The message contained a series of intercepted, heavily redacted financial documents. I had meticulously altered them to highlight a very specific, devastating narrative. The documents falsely indicated that Marcus had recently visited the Cayman Islands and quietly amended the incorporation papers of their secret shell company. According to the fake files I sent her, he had entirely removed her name as a beneficiary, redirecting 100% of the impending acquisition funds solely into a private trust controlled only by him. I attached a single, chilling sentence to the bottom of the encrypted message. "He is packing his bags, and you are not holding a ticket." The psychological trap was set. Marcus was hunting a phantom competitor, and Vanessa was suddenly staring down the barrel of a devastating betrayal. I sat back in my leather chair, watching the internal temperatures of Aura Nova Solutions rise to a boiling point. The rats were finally trapped in the cage, and they were preparing to eat each other alive. The digital clock glowing on my office wall indicated there were exactly 3 hours and 45 minutes remaining until the absolute final deadline. The suffocating pressure inside the corporate headquarters of Aura Nova Solutions had reached a critical, explosive threshold. Through the secure audio channel I had established under my fake persona, Marcus's voice echoed in my ear. He sounded like a man drowning in a violently turbulent ocean, desperately gasping for a single breath of air. "Listen to me, Harper," Marcus pleaded, his tone a pathetic mixture of executive command and sheer, unadulterated panic. "The legal team from Apex Global Corporation is sitting in the main conference room right now. They are demanding the final green light on the server architecture. If you can guarantee that the system will hold up during the live audit and the official contract signing, I will make you the wealthiest security consultant on the planet. I will officially name you the Chief Technology Officer of the newly merged entity. You will have a guaranteed 7-figure base salary, absolute creative control, and 5% of the total acquired stock options. Just tell me the system is clean. Tell me you fixed it." I stared at the blinking cursor on my primary monitor, feeling a cold, dark wave of satisfaction wash over me. He was eagerly attempting to buy my loyalty with the very company he had violently stolen from me. "The hostile foreign encryption has been entirely neutralized," I lied smoothly, my voice modulated to sound utterly confident and strictly professional. "I have successfully rebuilt your core firewalls. The network architecture is currently running at 100% optimal capacity. You have my absolute guarantee that the system will perform flawlessly during the live demonstration." Thank God. Marcus exhaled sharply into the microphone, a heavy sigh of profound relief that practically vibrated through the speakers. I owe you everything. Harper, I am heading to the press room now. He abruptly ended the call, blindly believing that his multi-billion-dollar dream was finally secure. He had absolutely no idea that I had just handed him a beautifully wrapped grenade with the pin entirely pulled out. The moment the audio line disconnected, I immediately shifted my attention to the live video feeds streaming directly from the hidden executive security cameras. While Marcus was busy celebrating his fake victory, the poisonous seed I had planted in Vanessa's mind the night before was finally violently blooming. The heavy mahogany door of his private office suddenly burst open. Vanessa stormed into the room, her face pale, her eyes wide with a feral, terrifying rage. She swiftly turned around, locked the heavy door behind her, and violently pulled the privacy blinds shut. "You miserable lying coward!" Vanessa screamed, her voice cracking as she slammed a thick stack of printed papers directly onto his polished glass desk. Marcus physically recoiled, instantly dropping his expensive silk tie. "What is wrong with you? The Apex legal team is sitting 50 feet down the hallway. Keep your voice down." "Do not tell me to lower my voice while you are quietly packing your bags to leave me with absolutely nothing," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the documents. "I hired a private investigator. I saw the altered registry files for the Cayman Islands accounts. You completely removed my name from the Shell Corporation. You are planning to take the entire $2.5 billion payout for yourself." Marcus stared at the papers, his face contorting in genuine, absolute confusion that rapidly morphed into blinding, defensive fury. He had absolutely no idea where those documents came from, because I had meticulously fabricated every single page of them. But his profound guilt regarding his other massive financial crimes made him instantly defensive. "You hacked my personal files?" Marcus roared, stepping aggressively toward her. "You hired someone to spy on me on the most important day of my life? You are completely out of your mind." "I am out of my mind," Vanessa countered, picking up a heavy crystal glass and hurling it violently against the far wall. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces, perfectly mirroring the absolute destruction of their toxic alliance. "I helped you forge the quarterly revenue reports. I helped you hide the phantom payroll accounts. I kept your filthy secrets while you paraded your pathetic wife around. If you think you can just cut me out and leave me completely empty-handed, I swear to you right now, I will walk straight into that conference room and hand the Apex auditors every single shred of evidence I have against you." They lunged at each other, their voices overlapping in a chaotic, venomous symphony of bitter accusations, foul curses, and desperate threats. They were so deeply consumed by their mutual hatred and their blinding paranoia that they completely forgot about the active computer terminal sitting on the desk right next to them. This was the exact, perfect window of chaotic distraction I had been patiently waiting for, while they were fiercely tearing each other apart like rabid animals. My hands flew across my mechanical keyboard in Austin, with the master administrative access Marcus had foolishly granted me. I completely bypassed the final, deeply buried layer of their internal security. I plunged directly into the darkest, most heavily guarded sectors of the Aranova financial mainframe. I bypassed the fake ledgers they showed the public and accessed the shadow servers. It was a digital goldmine of absolute corruption. I initiated a massive, silent data extraction protocol. I watched the progress bars on my screen slowly fill up as I downloaded gigabytes of undeniable, catastrophic evidence. I pulled 7 years of heavily falsified tax returns. I extracted the secret internal memos, where Marcus explicitly ordered the engineering team to lie about the software capabilities. I downloaded the complete, unredacted banking histories showing exactly how they illegally funneled millions of dollars of investor capital into their private offshore accounts. I captured everything, every single illegal keystroke, every fraudulent signature, and every stolen dollar was now sitting securely on my encrypted hard drive. With the evidence safely in my possession, it was time to arm the final, lethal trap. The Apex Global Corporation required a live, ceremonial digital handshake to officially finalize the multi-billion-dollar merger. Marcus was scheduled to stand on a brightly lit stage in front of dozens of financial reporters, insert his secure cryptographic key into a terminal, and sign the master contract. I swiftly wrote a secondary, highly sophisticated self-destruct algorithm and quietly injected it directly into the network's main artery. It was a flawless logic bomb. It would remain entirely dormant, completely invisible to any diagnostic scan. It was specifically programmed to awaken at the exact millisecond Marcus's cryptographic signature hit the Apex servers. The digital signing bell would be the ultimate trigger. Back on the security feed, the violent argument in the office had momentarily paused. Marcus had physically backed Vanessa into a corner, his hands gripping her shoulders entirely too tight. "You will shut your mouth, you will put on your makeup, and you will stand exactly where you are supposed to stand," Marcus hissed, his face inches from hers, sweating profusely. "We will finish this press conference, we will secure the money, and then we will deal with this ridiculous misunderstanding. Do you understand me? If you blow this deal, we both go to federal prison for the rest of our natural lives." Vanessa glared at him with pure, unadulterated venom. But she slowly nodded her head. The overwhelming greed temporarily overpowered her blinding rage. She viciously pushed him away, straightened her expensive designer dress, and walked out of the room without saying another word. Marcus stood alone in the center of his office for a long moment, breathing heavily. He roughly wiped the sweat from his forehead, adjusted the collar of his crisp white shirt, and forcefully fixed his tie. He stared at his reflection in the dark glass of the window, practicing his charming, victorious smile. He genuinely, foolishly believed he had successfully survived the storm. He proudly marched out of his office, completely ready to face the flashing cameras and claim his fraudulent empire. I sat comfortably in my quiet, sun-drenched penthouse office in Austin. The air conditioning hummed softly in the background. I took a slow, deep breath, feeling an incredible, overwhelming sense of absolute clarity. I opened a highly secure, heavily encrypted browser window and navigated directly to the official whistleblower portal of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. I attached the massive, meticulously organized digital dossier containing every single piece of financial fraud, tax evasion, and corporate espionage Marcus had committed over the past decade. I included the clear, unarguable proof of Vanessa's absolute complicity as his primary co-conspirator. I categorized the files, highlighted the most devastating illegal transactions, and provided a detailed, anonymous summary of their entire criminal enterprise. I calmly reached out, placed my finger firmly on the mouse, and clicked the submit button. The screen instantly flashed green, confirming that the catastrophic package had been successfully delivered to the highest federal financial authorities. The absolute destruction of Marcus and Vanessa was no longer a possibility. It was an inevitable, rapidly approaching reality. All that was left to do was sit back, watch the live broadcast, and wait for the final, glorious explosion. The grand atrium of Oranova headquarters was completely blinding, packed shoulder to shoulder with financial journalists, industry analysts, and flashing cameras. Marcus stood confidently at the center of the massive glass stage, his custom-tailored suit immaculate, his smile radiating pure, arrogant victory. Behind him, a towering, 60-foot-high digital display showcased the beautifully designed logos of Oranova Solutions and Apex Global Corporation. This was his crowning achievement. The momentous occasion was being broadcast live across 4 major financial news networks. I watched the high-definition stream on my monitor in Austin, leaning forward as a representative from Apex handed Marcus the digital stylus to officially execute the merger agreement. "Today, we do not just merge 2 companies," Marcus announced, his voice echoing powerfully through the atrium. "We merge our brilliant visions for the future of technology." He dramatically lowered the stylus and signed his name on the glass tablet. That exact millisecond was the trigger. The logic bomb I had painstakingly embedded deep within the system finally woke up. The deafening applause was instantly cut short by a horrifying, high-pitched screech blasting from the main sound system. The giant 60-foot display behind Marcus violently flickered, the corporate logos dissolving into a chaotic storm of digital static. Then, the screen illuminated with something else entirely. Massive, undeniably clear images of his unredacted offshore bank statements, his secret internal emails ordering the falsification of revenue, and the explicit proof of his millions of dollars in tax evasion began scrolling rapidly for the entire world to see. Every single reporter in the room raised their camera, desperately snapping photos of the undeniable evidence of his monumental fraud. Marcus dropped the stylus as if it burned his hand. He spun around, his face draining of all color, his mouth hanging open in absolute terror as he watched his meticulously hidden crimes broadcast in bright red font. He screamed at the technicians to cut the power, but my code had completely locked them out of the control room. Before anyone could even react, the heavy glass doors of the atrium were forcefully thrown open. Dozens of federal agents wearing dark windbreakers flooded into the room. They pushed through the sea of shocked journalists and stormed the stage. "Marcus Sutherland, you are under arrest for massive securities fraud, wire fraud, and severe tax evasion," the lead agent barked, grabbing Marcus roughly by the shoulder and forcing his arms behind his back. The cold, sharp click of the metal handcuffs echoed perfectly through the live microphones. Marcus began sobbing uncontrollably, the pathetic tears ruining his perfect image as the cameras captured his utter humiliation. Meanwhile, the secondary security feed showed Vanessa attempting a desperate, frantic escape. She had recognized the disaster the moment the screens changed and immediately sprinted toward the rear service exit. She pushed through the heavy metal doors, bursting into the alleyway, only to find 3 police cruisers already blocking her path. 2 officers aggressively pinned her against the brick wall. Marcus, completely broken and desperate to save himself, had already started screaming her name to the federal agents as they dragged him away. It was Vanessa! She handled the offshore accounts. She was the mastermind, he wailed publicly, instantly throwing his fellow conspirator directly under the bus. Back inside the atrium, right before the federal agents finally managed to physically smash the main server racks, the giant digital display shifted one last time. The financial documents vanished, replaced by a single, glowing line of text centered on the massive black screen. It was my exclusive, unmistakable digital architect signature. System override executed by Cassidy Edwards, even as he was being shoved into the back of a police vehicle. Marcus saw the giant screen through the glass doors. His knees buckled. In that final, agonizing moment, he finally realized that the phantom competitor, the brilliant hacker, and his ultimate destruction were all the meticulous work of the wife he thought he had effortlessly discarded. Within exactly 1 hour, Apex Global Corporation officially retracted their $2.5 billion offer and immediately filed a massive, paralyzing lawsuit. Marcus was facing over 40 years in federal prison and hundreds of millions in unpayable restitution. He would never see the outside of a cell again. In my quiet, sunny office, I calmly initiated one final sequence. I routed exactly $5 million of my legally secured wealth into various anonymous trusts dedicated to supporting female entrepreneurs starting their own independent businesses. Then, I initiated a complete wipe of my server tower. The shell company known as Harper Quinn Consulting vanished into the digital ether, permanently closed forever. I closed my laptop, grabbed my coat, and walked out of the building. The sky above Austin was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The warm Texas breeze brushed against my face. I took a deep, refreshing breath of clean air, smiling as I stepped onto the vibrant sidewalk. I had an immense, completely legal fortune, absolute freedom, and a beautiful, endless future ahead of me. I would never, ever look back. Thank you so much to all the wonderful listeners for tuning in to our story today. Please let us know in the comments where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed today's story and want to help us keep going, please consider supporting our channel with just $1. You can scan the PayPal QR code on your screen or use the PayPal link provided in the description and the comments. Your kind donation helps us pay our hardworking staff so they can feed their families and continue creating great stories for you. Have a beautiful day.